to the bitter end. This is a quote from George Huntington stated in a paper written by Sarah Tabrizi and P. McColgan in Huntington's Disease, a Clinical Review. Due to its high mortality rate, Huntington's disease has been at the core of many medical research papers. Many of them are published in the U of M library, which I used to help me write this speech. In my informative speech today, I'll talk about Huntington's disease, the beginning stages of the disease, the implications on the person diagnosed as well as their families, and the therapies used to create a cure. So this disease is named after its credited founder, George Huntington, as stated in Huntington's Disease from Clinical to Therapeutics by Carlos Cepeda and Xiaoping Tong. George Huntington, an American physician, who at the time was only 22 years old, published a short communication in the Medical and Surgical Review from Philadelphia describing a hereditary chorea. They later described chorea as uncontrollable dance-like movements. It's very important to note that hereditary chorea, the hereditary nature of this disease means that it is passed down from parents to offspring, and if your mother or father has this disease, there's a 50% chance that the offspring will have this disease. So what is Huntington's disease? As stated in Huntington's Disease and Brain Development by Sandrine Humphrey and Monia Barnett, Huntington's disease is a rare inherited neurological disorder that generally manifests in mild adulthood. The disease is characterized by the dysfunction and degeneration of specific brain structures, leading progressively to psychiatric, cognitive, and motor disorders. As stated in another article called Potential Disease-Modifying Therapies for Huntington's Disease, Lessons Learned and Future Opportunities by Sarah Tabrizi et al. Says, in contrast to most neurodegenerative conditions, a single gene mutation is responsible for all cases of Huntington's disease. This means that the disease is caused by a mutation in the gene causing the Huntington protein, or the HTT protein, by Humbert and Frank. So some symptoms of this disease, as you already know, chorea. But other ones, as stated by McColgan and Tabrizi, are abnormal gait, poor balance, and frequent falls. Because this is a neurodegenerative disease, it affects your brain, so there are also some psychiatric symptoms like apathy, anxiety, irritability, depression, obsessive-compulsive behavior, and psychosis, as stated by McColgan and Tabrizi. Some clinical testing they use are Stroop word reading, symbol, digit modulators, and circle tracing, as stated by McColgan and Tabrizi. But the only surefire way to know that you have Huntington's disease is using diagnosis of Huntington's disease based on a confirmed family history or positive genetic test, stated by McColgan and Tabrizi. So this is an image from a hereditary disorder in the family and family life cycle as a paradigm by Christine Brower-Dedewick et al. So the circles represent women, and the squares represent men in the family. The shaded circles and squares represent that they had Huntington's disease, and the slash through it means that they have died. And this shaded circle right here shows that they have a early onset of Huntington's disease, meaning that they're only showing some symptoms, but not all of them. And this arrow is pointing to the story that I'll be talking about, so specifically this family's story. So, the story of this family was reviewed in a psychological study done on patients who had taken a Huntington's disease DNA test. This specific story follows Mr. E, his wife, and his 2 children. Mr. E has 4 siblings, as you can see, and he took the test and realized that he's the sole non-carrier of Huntington's gene in his family. Gratefully, he told his children that they wouldn't have to live with this disease and that he was safe and wouldn't have to become a patient. But the children and him started to have to take increasingly more care of their aunts and uncles because they were dying of this disease. The entire family is defined by Huntington's disease, Though Mr. and Mrs. E may not have the disease, they will never escape it. And this is paraphrased from Brower, Dedewick et al. Here's another story from the same article, A Hereditary Disorder in Family and Family Life, Huntington's Disease as a Paradigm. So this shows that a mother died of Huntington's disease and had 2 children. And this circle shows that she's a gene carrier. She just hasn't started showing any symptoms yet. So Miss A took a test to find out if she would be a carrier of the Huntington gene. At the time of the test, she was a single young adult who wanted to make plans for the future. She found out she was a carrier and later met a partner and was able to get married. She expressed that she didn't have any problems finding a partner or getting married itself, but she really did have problems with the idea of having kids. Her mother did opt for children, although she knew that there was a 50% chance that her kids would also have this disease. Miss A gradually found that it was becoming increasingly difficult to cope with the test results. She was no longer able to decide whether it was good or bad to have children. She even stated that she was proud of her mother, even though she was a risk. Miss A realized she did not know what sort of person her mom was, only the patient she was. And that's paraphrased from Brower, Dedewick et al. So this is not an issue whether Miss A should or should not have been tested, but that coping with the test results differs between different life stages, from Brower, Dedewick et al. Struggles with the disease normally happen when people decide to have children or not. AMT 130. This is a gene therapy that was just found out a couple months ago. As stated by Chris Lane, and gene therapy appears to slow Huntington's disease progression. AMT 130 is a gene therapy that permanently introduces new functional DNA into a person's cells. This breakthrough was made by Professor Tabrizi, Professor Wild, along with Professor Gillian Bates. Lane states. So this gene therapy will consist of particles of a harmless empty virus plus a set of instructions encoded in custom-made DNA. The virus is injected directly into a part of the brain called the striatum, which is particularly vulnerable in Huntington's disease. The founders are, as stated by Chris Lane, the founders are eager to discuss the data with the FDA at their presentation for biologics licensing application meeting expected later this year, with the goal of submitting a BLA on the first quarter of 2026, quoted by Lane. In my informative speech today, I talked about Huntington's disease, the beginning stages of the disease, the implications on the person diagnosed as well as their families, and therapies used to make a cure. Thank you for listening.